Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the 2019 Marshall State of the City Address featuring Mayor Bob Burns and City Administrator Sharon Hansen. I'd like to acknowledge our member sponsors of today's program. First off, our corporate sponsors, Avera Marshall, the Schwann's Company, Brember Bank, Wells Fargo, the City of Marshall, Ralco and True Shrimp, U.S. Bank, and Southwest Minnesota State University. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsors today, Hoffman and Brobst, Henley Printing, Action Manufacturing, Eco Water, Ramada and Midwest Bank. Thank you for support on this event. With the representatives from all these sponsors, please stand and be recognized. Also joining us today is a special guest of Alan with Schwann's, and that's Priscilla On with CJ America. Please welcome her and give her a nice Marshall round of applause. We have many elected officials in the room. I'd like to recognize them. I'd like to recognize Bill Mosel with the school board, Lyon County Commissioners Gary Crowley, Paul Groutman, and Rick Anderson, and the very newly elected Lyon County Sheriff Eric Wallen. Thank you for attending. And now I ask that you please rise if you are able for the singing of the national anthem by Marshall Fire Chief Quentin Brunsvold.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. So again, thank you for attending the 2019 State of the City Address, which I think is the first one that Marshall has ever had. And thanks to the Chartwell staff for making today's lunch so enjoyable. So I've been asked, why a State of the City Address, and why does the Chamber host this? The Chamber and the City of Marshall have one thing in common, and that is we are in it to help promote the City of Marshall. And the great opportunity, and what great opportunity to do that with the State of the City Address. In my previous stops at the Bloomington Chamber and the Southwest Metro Chamber in Eastern Carver County, it was an opportunity for the city to be transparent with the business community about everything that's going on. What I don't expect is for this side of the room to stand when they agree with something the mayor says, and for this side of the room to keep sitting like the State of the Union. Frame it as an annual meeting for a nonprofit where nonprofits will talk about their previous year, the goods and the bads, and then talk about the upcoming year. Today, we will have a similar feel to it. Now it's time for our main event. I would like to introduce Mayor Bob Burns and City Administrator Sharon Hansen. Mayor Bob Burns is serving his 8th term as mayor, and prior served 6 years as a council member. So I think he was elected at 10 years old, I think. Mayor Burns has been Marshall resident since 1979 and is currently the Director of Field Operations for this University of Minnesota Extension, where he has been employed since 1979. The mayor has received several awards: Outstanding Elected Official by the Minnesota Association of Emergency Managers, Purcell Pinnacle Award for Outstanding Humanitarian, the University of Minnesota Community Service Award, and the Distinguished Service Award by the NACAA. Bob and his wife Brenda have 2 adult children, Bridget and Brian, and 2 granddaughters, Quinn and Kennedy. Sharon has committed herself to Southwest, now on to Sharon. Sharon has committed to herself to Southwest Minnesota over the last 20 years. She has 20 years of local government and 5 years working in the private sector. She has held various supervisory leadership roles throughout her career, with the last year and a half serving as the Marshall City Administrator. As the City Administrator, she oversees the annual budget of $30 million with the oversight of 5 divisions: Administrative Services, Public Works, Community Planning, Public Safety, and Community Services. Sharon is a member of the Sunrise Rotary and looks forward to additional community involvement during her tenure. Sharon and her husband Mark have 2 children in high school, Cole and Kaylin. Please welcome Mayor Bob Burns and the City Administrator Sharon Hansen.
Well, thank you, Brad. First off, a little sound check. Is this coming through okay? Okay. Thank you for that introduction. That was actually a really long introduction. So I'm glad Sharon's here because sometimes the introduction gets longer than my remarks. So really glad to be here. Glad to see this crowd as well as this is being live streamed also. And it's my pleasure to be kind of have this transparent discussion and have Sharon Hansen also assist me with this discussion. Actually, we were talking at the table, Sharon and I have very different presentation preparation styles, like she prepares, and so all of the slides that you'll see are really due to Sharon's talent. So with that, should we go ahead and get started?
And just so everyone knows, we did not rehearse this, so if there's a little bit of a hiccup, which actually I will just mention, someone needs to give me the clicker because I do not have a way to move the slides forward, and I don't know who has that. So if they could bring that forward, that'd be great. It's
On the podium, okay.
I'll just quickly follow up to Brad's introduction as well. He referenced the State of the Union. I think the mayor and I would be perfectly fine if you want to stand and clap like the State of the Union. It'd be perfectly fine with us. Anytime.
So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Here's kind of the brief overview of what we're going to do. We're going to have some introductions, welcome, just so everyone knows who we are and who our leadership team is. We'll talk about the 2018 year in review. We'll try to move quickly because, we want to honor your time. And we could talk a long time about all of the things that have happened in 2018. And then we'll talk about 2019, where we're at, and what we see this year as well as beyond, both the opportunities and then the things that we worry about. We'll talk about the weather at some point in there because it's hard to have a conversation without talking about the weather. Sharon has some speaker notes that she asked me to review. I actually looked at them this morning, and we have a couple slides about the weather that we're going to talk about. And then the speaker note is I will push to the next slide when you talk too long about the weather. So with that, let me first introduce the city council members, and if I could ask the city council members that are here to stand and be recognized, Dr. Steve Meister, Russ Labatt, John DeKramer, Craig Schaefer, am I missing? And Jim Lazinski. And the one city council member who is not here is Glenn Barricola. He had a family issue out of town, so that's why he's not here. I recognize these people because we have a good city council members, city council as a whole. We work together. Everyone comes prepared. Everyone does their work. We have differences of opinion, but everyone wants the best for the city. So help me to thank the city council members. Then we'd also like to recognize our leadership team and of the city. We're not going to go through individually, but these people whose names are there, if I could ask you to stand, this is our leadership team that really does the hard work of the city. So if I could have staff that are here stand up. And of course, our city administrator, before you get too far, our city administrator, Sharon Hansen. And one of the things that goes well for a city council and as mayor is when you have a city administrator who's competent, that you can trust, it's hardworking. That's what we have with Sharon. So rather than go through a lot of detail about everything that happened last year, we have a short, it's about 2.5 minutes, video that Studio 8 put together, kind of a retrospect of all the things that went on in our various departments within the city that they were involved with. So with that, we'll move into that video.
This should work.
And again, thank you to Studio 8 for putting that together. Any one of those things that were shown, we could all have a story behind them. And some of you know those stories and some of you know the details, but we're not going to be going into all of that. So that's just a quick overview of some of the visuals of what went on. But we will talk about a few items that were shown there that we want to highlight. First off, the New Commerce Park. That's 137 acres on the north side of the community. Many of you are familiar with that. That was constructed this past year after many years of planning, and the whole idea is to have shovel-ready land ready when business and industry needs and wants to expand. So the infrastructure is there. There was a substantial amount of soil that was moved. You actually have the detail on that, Sharon, probably.
220,000 cubic yards. I believe I got that right, Jason. Did I? Yeah.
No, he says more than that. So
More than that.
So a lot of soil was moved. It was completely leveled, and the infrastructure was put in. The street was put in. It is shovel ready to go. So that's important, because as the community grows and as business needs to expand, they don't have time to wait for the city to maybe spend a year or 18 months, preparing a site. It is ready to go. The second one there would be the Saratoga Street project, and of course this was a disruptive project, but it went very well. We had a local contractor, R&G Construction was the general contractor on, and it went amazingly well given the weather challenges that we had. We remember back to July 3rd when that project was opened up, it was under construction, and then we had the historic rains, but the project was completed, and it really is a nice, not only attractive reconstruction, but very safe too. Our Merit Center, the Merit Center, Merit is the acronym for the Minnesota Emergency Response and Industrial Training Center, training for emergency responders as well as industry. We did receive $3.1 million of state bonding dollars last year, and awarded by the state legislature. That project is for an expansion of the driving track that is currently bid out. R&G Construction will start construction on that this coming year. That will extend that track to, Craig, help me, is it a mile? If you didn't hear him, it's 90-mile-an-hour capability in just over a mile, and that 90-mile-an-hour capability, that's important for public safety as they do their speed and skid training. So there also will be additions to the, I'll call it the industry trucking training that is there, the backing, the skills pad. Again, there's a lot of detail that we could go into beyond that. The what's next there?
The next highlight we want to just briefly talk about is our fire department, which this last year had a record number of calls. I think you had slightly over 200 fire calls. You saw in the video a couple of those properties. Those two property owners are slowly rebuilding. So even though we want to highlight the great work of the fire department, we know that for some of them it was a tragic year as well. But we're really thankful that they were able to rebuild. And the great thing, especially with the Southwest travel, is that we had a lot of partnering local neighboring fire departments that helped with that particular fire call. So it was a true success in terms of mutual aid and response. And
the Light Up the Night is next on the list. And of course that was the inaugural year was out at SMSU. It was moved. This is sponsored by Prairie Home Hospice, and it was moved to Independence Park. I think that worked out really well. There was 220,000 individual lights that were part of that, and that's an event that will only grow.
Couple other items that we worked on in 2018 related to organizational structure. I know that when I first started with the City of Marshall in November of 2017, there was much discussion about our building inspection department. I think my first city council meeting, 40 community members showed up. I thought they were there to welcome me, but they wanted to talk about the building inspection department. But really what we did there, we felt strongly about the staff and supporting the staff. And so I like to call it that we realigned our talent in the building inspection department. And it's, to me, when I talk to contractors now, there's there's a better feeling out there about the building inspection department wanting to work with our local contractors. And I think there's really good communication. And I'll get a little bit, in a future slide, talk a little bit more about some of our communication strategies that we've used. Another area that we looked at organizationally is our administrative services department. So it's really functions and daily tasks that are under the city administrator, and we really wanted to concentrate on the finance. There's a lot of money that go in and out, not only property taxes but grant dollars and so forth. And so to restructure the administrative services department was really key, and so thankful that the city council was supportive of both of those moves.
This past year was also an election year, the midterm elections, and with our restructured, we also had some natural succession that has happened with some of our key staff. So we have a new city clerk. Our former city clerk retired, and so that was his first election that he managed. And of course, we had record voter turnout this past year. Interest in local issues, interest in state issues, also and national issues.
I want to add to the election year. One of the thing I think we should highlight that most people maybe don't always get to see is our relationship with Lyon County. And I think that their election staff at the county and our election staff really work well together, and we couldn't do it without the auditor treasurer, E.J. Moberg, and then the county commissioners, especially in this particular area. And so the staff of both entities work really well together. That was a highlight of 2018 where we could prove that.
The Avera Plaza dedication is also listed there. This is the plaza that is at the entrance of the Red Baron Arena and Expo Center. Avera is a major sponsor there. And that plaza sculpture does add to the art. That is a requirement because of some of the funding that we receive from the state, that we have some investment in art, so it did satisfy that. But more importantly, it makes a kind of a well-rounded facility to add art to the sports. Which leads right into a couple other sporting events. The Wild Hockey Spotlight that was held just about several weeks ago. Where the Minnesota Wild did their statewide spotlight. It was a Pee Wee B game that Marshall and New Ulm played, and it was just a special night. It was a record crowd that was there. These young kids didn't know that was going to happen, so it was special. And I think that was, someone correct me here, but I think that was the first game that they won all year, so that was neat. And then the final thing there is the Minnesota Vikings town takeover. Of course, the Vikings have a strong interest in Southwest Minnesota and in Marshall, so they sponsored what they titled the town takeover. And that was actually April 13th. Sharon reminded me because when we were reviewing the slides, or I was going over, I said, I don't think I was there. And Sharon said, yes, you talked at that. So yes, I was. But I remember it was April 13th because the very next day was a blizzard, April 14th. So we'll move forward.
One of the items I think government gets maybe persuaded or pushed to do a little bit better is transparency and better communication. And I think in 2018, the city of Marshall really improved in this area, and I think we really try to get ourselves out there. And we know that with technology and the way people get their news, we have to use all different kinds of communication. I think through this list that's really highlighted. Last year was the first year that council members conducted town halls, and that was an opportunity for citizens to ask questions of their council members without having to come to the formal meeting. And I think those were really well received, and looking at doing them again this year, one scheduled for next week and the week following for the remainder of those town halls. So be on the lookout for promotion of those events. The administrator newspaper columns, people still do read the newspaper, and we do put this out on our website and sometimes on social media. But those are done monthly, and usually I pick a topic that is meant to provide further education on a particular topic. And they could be controversial and sometimes non-controversial. And I will add, I'm probably not the best writer that's out there, but these are really good newspaper columns. They really are. They really go into detail about city services and help explain some of the things that we do. Monthly radio interviews, not only myself, but our staff do monthly radio interviews. So we've got Dan Pollock here, and he's been really great in getting the word out and helping us with that as well. The mayor and I did an event at the Senior Center a couple weeks ago, and that was called the Fireside Chat. Social media, as you can tell with the video, our media communication staff does an excellent job, and they've done a really fantastic job in 2018 and up to current about increasing what we put out on the web, Facebook, and so forth. And I think we estimated that in 2018 we increased it 30%. I know that Alex and his staff does a really great job, and I think at one event they were thanking Alex and his staff, and they called them the internet. So that's how big and great they are. The other video that Alex and his staff have worked on too is these Marshall Works videos. We've highlighted different departments in the city and really went inside those departments and give an inside view of what those departments look like to our citizens. And we'll be looking at doing more of those in 2019. Back to a little bit on the building services department. One of the things that we wanted to do is promote the building code because we are in a regulatory situation, but we do want to educate in that areas too. And starting late last year, and we released the first one this year, is a contractor newsletter, and I think that was really well received. And then I'll keep it going here, but our new police chief, director of public safety, Jim Marshall, did an event at the Senior Center. We're kind of calling it Coffee with Cops. We hope to do some more of those events in the upcoming year. We'll probably hit Mike's Cafe sometime in 2019, and we do, at least at one of those events, want to include our county sheriff as well. Him being newly elected and getting him out there in the public is just as important as the city getting out there. And then one-on-one visits. Those are so important. I know our chamber director does a lot of those. I took a lot of time in 2018 talking to people on the phone, visiting them in their office, or them visiting me, and it's been a really great experience, and it's helped my first year really successful by talking to all of you.
So this wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about the weather, and so I will briefly discuss the weather. And in talking about why weather is important for the city of Marshall, it's not only what goes on here, it's also because of our geography. As we know, the Redwood River flows through the city of Marshall. It starts, the headwaters where Redwood River starts is up near Lake Benton. At the top of the Buffalo Ridge, that's 38 river miles, and there's 760 feet of elevation change between that point and where we're sitting right now. Then the Redwood River continues to Granite Falls, where it enters Redwood Falls, where it enters the Minnesota River, and there's 38 feet of elevation change. So historically, in fact, it happened 19 times in history prior to 1993 that Marshall was subject to flash floods, because if there was a heavy rain upstream, about a day later it ended up in Marshall and caused problems. So the picture that you have, and I know these are a little bit difficult to see, the one with the backhoe, that's actually from 1993. That was one of the floods. That was the first year I was mayor. We had a flood on Mother's Day, Father's Day, and the 4th of July that year. And that is standing on Highway 23, looking north on County Road 7. And the only way the city had to respond to that was to build a levee on top of the road. And there was another one that was constructed on the north side of the town near what was Camelot Square Trailer Park, and that was to protect the city from water coming in from both directions. That's been corrected, and I'll talk a little bit more in that in detail, but I think we all know that, in fact, the level that the river is at and will be at later today, without that protection, we'd have some problems. So were you going to say something
I
more?
was just going to add the lower right picture is actually from last weekend. And you probably have noticed even today we have a lot of street crews out trying to clear the catch basins. And we'll have some minor street flooding and ponding. And obviously, if you want to report them, you can definitely call City Hall and we'll get city crews there. But this is a priority for us this week, and especially with our rain event today.
So we're really focusing on two things. One is what's currently going on with the rapid snow melt, and of course we have a historic amount of snow that fell in February, and up until yesterday we had no melt or no substantial melt since prior to January 18th when our weather pattern changed. Even looking farther back than that, we had that July rainfall event that was a heavy rain all over southwest Minnesota, and that put us into going into the fall, that and as well as other precipitation in really capacity of what our soil holding capacity is. So that's why our crews right now are working hard to clear the storm drains if at all possible. And that's why we've been encouraging residents to protect their own property as the snow around their homes melts, to be sure that it isn't going to cause them problems. So this is a screenshot of, thank you for pushing me along. This is a screenshot of the river gauge as of, I think this was 7:30 this morning. So this is accessible to anybody. It's on our web, but the Department of Natural Resources and USGS maintain a river gauge, and where it's at is out at Victory Park. Some of you remember that as formerly known as Wayside Park, and it's located actually directly underneath the walk bridge. So this is where it's at right now as of March 13th. We're at about, about 12 and a half feet or so. So if we advance to the next slide. The reason why that's important is for this reason. So 14 feet is right there. And that is the historic flood stage. So prior to flood control project, that was the level that water would jump out. The reddish tint, that's what we call the action stage. That's when the water will start to fully utilize the diversion channel, fill that up, as well as some of the other ponding. And then above this level, then that's where a lot of the storage capacity, such as the area between the river and the railroad, and that will all fill up, and that's all protected by the dike and protected from the city. There's a tremendous amount of capacity there to store water. So last summer we were at about 16 and a half feet. Now the x-axis on this chart is the probability, and of course, we're at about right there. We'll be about right there, in the next week or so. And then there's a 5% probability that will be up here, and that's at 19 feet. And at 19 feet, that's where the water overflows at Wayside Park. It overtops the weir that's there. And the reason that's important is because that's the natural overflow level of when water will leave the Redwood watershed and then go into the Cottonwood watershed. So at Wayside Park, it will go down into Victory Park. If we are ever at that level, then we'll go through the big culverts underneath Highway 23, go through the Texas Crossing that's by at the entrance to the Klein addition, and then enter the county ditch system. We've never, ever been there. But we are prepared if we do get there, and then there's a whole contingency plans of what happens then. I guess the point here is that we have a flood control project that works. We have a set of procedure that kick in at each of the level, and we have staff that are understand it, that are watching it, and that are prepared to do what needs to be done if we're ever at that level. Okay, so then shifting gears, thank you. Shifting gears then, let's talk about, what's really important is our business community. Because as we all know, Marshall is and has always been a community that's about jobs. We're not a community that's a resort community. We're not a lake community. We are a community that is all about jobs and economic development. And we're blessed in this community to have regional businesses, regional employers that serve not only Marshall, but also the area around the Marshall. I was telling Priscilla at the table that half the employees that work in Marshall don't live in Marshall. And so that's why this is really not just a Marshall event, this is a Marshall area event, because the communities around Marshall are very important to sustain the workforce. And of course, all of these businesses and industries that are listed here, and I think you have the logos of some of the highest levels of employers that are here, are shown here, but certainly there's others. But all of those employers are able to be successful in Marshall for one reason, and that's because there's a quality workforce. This is a workforce that's talented, that can be attracted to the area, that is retained in the area. It isn't like they're in a metro area where an employee could go to a different employer and not even change school districts. When you're in Marshall, you're in Marshall. So, and that's really that consistent workforce. That's the workforce that sticks around. So that's really allows these industries and businesses to be successful.
For Marshall, there's 20 employers that employ 100 plus employees. And again, as Bob stated, we listed some of them here. So it's very important for our community in the surrounding area. This past year, we obviously are very well aware of Schwann's and CJ, and we're looking forward in 2019 to partnering with them. We look back at the history of Marshall, and so many great things have happened with our partnership with Schwann's, and we want to continue that forward into 2019. And so that'll be exciting for us. And we recently had a land sales transaction with Action Manufacturing. And we really look towards some growth there. And I know Tim and Donna have said they sometimes don't have enough time in the day, but it's a great facility, and their story and the potential is really there. And one of the things I'll mention too, we talk a lot about True Shrimp, but Relco is home. Marshall is home. And in 2021, they're going to be in Marshall for 50 years. And so that particular business started out of a garage, and so starting small and ending up to be a large presence in Marshall is not uncommon for some of our communities. One other thing that was really important as well, it was Avera Marshall and their partnership with ACMC Medical Clinic. And Bob has the history of the city's interest in our regional hospital here, and maybe I'll just pause here if you want to comment a little bit about the importance of Avera and what they mean to the city of Marshall.
Well, I think the city council recognized a number of years ago, and Steve, was that about 8 years ago or 9, that the city realized that we're going to attract and retain physicians and medical specialists that would be very difficult to do under public ownership. So that's why we then entertained the private transfer of ownership, and ultimately it was transferred to Avera. At that time, and Steve, you correct me, but we had 0 employed, maybe 1 employed physician at what was then called Wiener Memorial Medical Center. Sonia, you have the detail on that too. When the city owned it, and now there's 50 plus practitioners in medical? 80 that are there. That's important. Not only are they a great employer, but that also for the other employers in the community, that means that your employees have the access to quality medical services, to specialty services, don't have to leave the community, don't have to go to another state, don't have to take a day off of work for some medical exam or procedure that you can now get in Marshall. So that's been a success. And that was really one of the driving reasons why we looked at the transfer of ownership. Of course, the other reason was, probably cities are ill-equipped to properly manage a hospital. Whereas an organization like Avera, that is what they do, and they do quality work. We would be remiss if we didn't also talk about one other employer, and that's Southwest Minnesota State University, where we're at right now. And of course, SMSU adds a lot to the quality of the region. They're a great employer, and of course, they're going through a leadership transition now as President Connie Gores retires and the selection of the new president here. But I think it's really important that for Marshall and for the region that SMSU continues to be successful.
We also wanted to highlight some of our what we would call smaller business, but so important to us in our community. But not only on the development that's out by Walmart, which is where we have our tall grass liquor store, and then recently the new development of Aldi, but also our downtown is really important. And we can get a little worried and concerned about our retail environment, especially. We know that consumers and how they shop are different, and it has had some impact in Marshall. But recently, the University of Minnesota did a study on retail sales, and likely the city of Marshall will put this out in a chart, which we didn't have ready for this presentation, but even though Marshall has lost some actual retail sales have increased 27%. And when we compare ourselves to some of the other communities, Worthington or Wilmer, we actually exceed those communities. That particular study was highlighted in the Star Tribune a couple months ago, and one of the featured business owners at that time was the owner of Alley J's. And that's a new development on 3rd Street. And I always like to think that the concept of open malls or personal shoppers, if you don't know maybe what to get, when you look at 3rd Street and Main Street, really that's, to me, the new mall and our new concept of how we can really promote retail to our consumers and how they shop.
We also show a pull factor there of 1.62. What the pull factor is a measurement that is reflective of the what would normally be expected based on the population of the community. If they all did their shopping in town, that would be a 1, and anything below 1 would be people are leaving the community for their retail activity, and anything above 1 means that it's more than expected, or in other words, other people outside of the community are coming to the community. So we're at 1.62, which is one of the highest. I believe it's the 3rd or 4th highest in greater Minnesota.
A couple other points we want to make about our economy is overall our sales tax revenue. We do actually track this on a monthly basis and year to year, and we've actually seen an increase in sales tax revenue, which indicates that our economy in the city of Marshall and supported by our surrounding area is still strong. And then also I mentioned prior our liquor store, which is a municipal-owned liquor store, dating back to the mid-30s. And the reason the city got into the liquor store business is we wanted to control the sale of liquor. Now the trends are kind of changing on us a little bit. There's still a number of municipal liquor stores out there, and what we do with the revenue for the liquor store is, in part, it reduces property taxes. So the success of that helps everyone in our community.
One final word about the sales tax revenue, that it is increasing year over year. And as many of you remember, the community did pass a local option sales tax, and there was projections about what the revenue would be from sales tax, and we're our actual receipts are well above what that projection was. So that's a good thing.
I did want to include, and I'm thinking it's pretty small print, but we have posted this on our website as well. This is from last year, just doing a comparison of our tax rate. Oftentimes we hear back from individuals or businesses about how high the taxes are. When we compared with like communities, we're right in the middle, if not near or closer to the bottom. And so we think we have an advantageous tax rate when we're looking at our other communities. And we'll be updating this chart again this year as soon as our county and city assessing staff get together and able to produce the same chart. And this chart, by the way, was looked at by many other communities and promoted, for example, in the city of Worthington, who also faces some of those similar questions. Okay, I do want to highlight as well for the city of Marshall is the quality of life, and one of the goals for 2019, and this is in a future slide, is we're going to embark on a branding messaging campaign because not only is it where you work, it's where you live and what you like about the community, and so that's extremely important for us. And I know that for many community members, when they often say they love Marshall and they list out why, and I've listed some of them here. Our crime rate is extremely low, and so it's a safe community. We have many parks and trails that the city maintains. We also have a regional trail that the county has partnered with us on and takes us to Camden State Park. Education, I do want to highlight that. I'm glad that the mayor talked about SMSU. Not only the economic impact that SMSU brings to us, but they have been a vital partner for the city of Marshall as well. But our high school and grade schools, private and public, we're seeing growing enrollment, and they have their own challenges, but this is a good sign for our community. The city of Marshall happens to be one of two communities in the county of Lyon that continues to grow. So it's challenging out there when you look at our smaller communities, but to see increased enrollment with our school district is a positive sign, even though it comes with challenges. Couple other things I do want to mention is, overall it's just a livability factor. We're a healthy population when you look statistically at our residents, and then we can't not mention our community organizations, the YMCA, United Way, the Marshall Community Foundation. I'm going to miss a whole bunch of other nonprofits that we have. They're so important to investing in our community and bringing together residents for a specific project. And they partner a lot with the city of Marshall. We couldn't do what we do without their help. One of the photos that we have on here is of Red Baron, and a lot of communication in Red Baron. When I came here a year ago, we're starting to see events pick up. We know that hockey enrollment is on the rise, and we see some growth at Red Baron. We don't think that we're necessarily done. We have a change at our Convention Visitors Bureau. Lauren Deitz has done a fantastic job of promoting not only the city of Marshall, but this particular facility. And last week, the mayor and I heard a story about a hockey player from New Ulm who was interviewed, and one of the questions was, what's the best hockey arena in the state? And he said, Marshall's Red Baron Hockey Arena. So that's just a testament to what this community has done. The other question they asked him is, who's the best hockey player in the state? And he said, Marshall's Mason Plant. So I thought that was pretty awesome just as well. So,
and that especially coming from a New Ulm player. So we're probably getting close to our allotted time here. We do want to leave some time for questions. So, but we do want to talk just quickly, or at least mention, we're not going to go into detail about some important issues that we have coming up this coming year. And in 2020 will be the census. That means in 2019, we really need to plan for that, because the census, the results of the census, will have implications on business and expansion for the following decade. So we really need to work to be sure that we have a complete count. And that means those hard to count audiences, some of our new populations, our student population, our sunbird populations that might be in Arizona and then come back, hopefully by April 1. So that April 1, 2020, that's what we really need to start planning for right now. And in 2022, then Marshall has its, you can say that word, sesquicentennial, so the 150 year anniversary of Marshall. And while 2022 seems a ways off, that planning really needs to start now. We have some other major projects. Our wastewater plant is out for bid now. Is really upgrading our aged equipment there. It simply needs to be replaced, looking at some efficiencies, as well as doing some upgrading to meet the current and anticipated regulatory requirements that we will have, as well as our city water plant. As we all know, Marshall Municipal Utilities is the supplier of water. That water ends up at our wastewater plant at the end, and we have a chloride restriction that will be coming on in 2024 to dramatically reduce the amount of chlorides that are being discharged into the river. Right now there's between 6,000 and 8,000 pounds of chloride or salt that enters the river that's discharged, and we need to dramatically decrease that for the quality of the river. And the only practical way to do that is to pre-soften the water as it is before it's delivered to homes, because the major source of chlorides would be the home water softening. So that project was recently awarded a $7 million through the Public Facilities Authority of the state of Minnesota. It will be roughly a $10.6 million project. It will be out for bid yet this year. Construction starting yet this fall. Should be on in place by early 2021. Very quickly, I'll just hit on some other things. The City Hall renovation. Our City Hall, originally constructed in 1964, at one point housed not only the city operations, it actually housed the first SMSU administration, also housed the police department at one point, housed the fire department at one point. It is in dire need of some renovation. The City Council has made a decision to renovate rather than replace on a different site. So we're actively involved in the planning of that at this point. We have a small cities grant that was received through the state of Minnesota to help homeowners and commercial property owners in the downtown area rehabilitate some of their properties and improve some of the appearance and facades and do some life safety and improvement. I mentioned our Merit Center driving track expansion. In our parks, we're involved in a pool study. We lose about, our aquatic center loses about 10,000 gallons of water a day during the summer through just infiltration out of the pool. And so we know that we're going to need to do some upgrading, perhaps wholesale replacement of the aquatic center. And we're actively involved in the study of that before any decisions are made. And of course, we're also planning for emerald ash borer's arrival into the community. Just over 50% of the trees in the community are green ash trees. They're all susceptible to emerald ash borer and that is a 100% fatal instance when emerald ash borer does come to a community. Right now, it's as close as Fairmont, Minnesota, and Minnehaha County or Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Eventually, it will get here. The longer we can delay it, the better, because that allows us to do additional plantings and reforestation, and that's what we're doing in our parks, and I know that's what many homeowners are doing on their home landscaping. Sharon mentioned the branding and marketing, and then of course I mentioned the change in leadership at SMSU. Those are all things that are probably top of our mind at City Council that we're thinking about in addition to probably a lot of other things. Any other detail you want to?
I think you did a great job with that.
So with that, yeah. So thank you. You've been an attentive audience. Everyone's still awake, so that's good. And so that actually went better than I expected. So we'll open it up for questions, right?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Burns and Sharon. There's a lot of things going on. It's very exciting. All the things looking forward to, and what a 2018 that we had. So I asked the audience ahead of time last week for some questions. I do have a few, and we have about 5 minutes to cover. We have 4, but we might have a couple time for just maybe a couple. And one of the things that's coming up here soon in a couple months is the referendum vote again. The school district will be going into voters again in May, asking for investment in our school facilities to support new space for our growing enrollment and safety and security measures for all students. Will the city administration and elected officials voice their opinions about the school district proposal?
So I could start on that. I think as a city council and city administration, we are going to respect the school board on this. And the school board is in the leadership in the school activities. We're going to stay in our lane and not presume to, influence the school board one way or another. That's really their issue. Of course, it's important to the community, and of course, hopefully, a lot of the things that we are doing will kind of help make the case for why the community needs to invest in itself. But at least unless you disagree, or unless you guys disagree, I probably think that the city council won't take a position on that.
I just want to add that in one column you can look at this is a problem with the facility and the student needs and so forth, but on the other column you can say what a great opportunity that the city of Marshall and the school district has. And it's a positive fact that our enrollment is growing and that the school board is asking for an investment in their future. And so obviously I agree with the mayor on the approach we're going to take, but we'll do whatever we can as far as sharing information and being transparent. We do get property tax questions among our staff, and we'll refer and try to help our the taxpayers any way we can with respect to that particular item.
Another question. Are there any plans for the old hotel? You talked about City Hall. So are there any plans for the old hotel downtown after they get it all cleaned up?
The short answer is yes, but you probably want more detail on that.
Part of the City Hall renovation is really it's really our dedication to downtown redevelopment, and the city council could have easily went somewhere else, and when you just look at dollars and cents, it might have been more affordable to look at a different location, but Main Street downtown is really important, and it goes beyond just the tangible dollars. There's a lot of intangible value to being where we're at, and so I think to have a private developer interested in that same commitment is truly important to us and the community. We believe that there'll be business development on the first floor. We haven't quite figured out what we're going to do on the upper levels. It's going to take some investment. It'll take some investment by the private developer, and likely we're going to have to do some economic development assistance as well, and those are challenging and difficult sometimes. We usually take them on a case-by-case basis, but really excited about this project, and we don't want holes in our Main Street. This is a way to keep Main Street intact. It'll look great next to a renovated City Hall, and we're really excited about it.
Just one thing to add there, and Sharon, you explained it well. The city is in the ownership of that, is the owner. And it took quite a while to get to the point that we do have the ownership of it. So we will have some investment regardless of what happens. If we were to tear it down, that's going to cost something. We're going to have to remove anything hazardous in there, like asbestos. So we have that cost. We have the cost of what would be tearing it down and what would be there afterwards. So that's why we want to do, explore every possibility of working with a private developer to ultimately, put that to use rather than tearing it down. We'll go down that road as far as we can. I mean, there's no guarantees. Maybe it won't work, but at least we can say we tried.
Okay. Time for one more question. Can you please share the timeline and process for the city's comprehensive plan to be updated?
It's definitely a goal of the city of Marshall. The document is from 1996, so we're...
Which doesn't seem that long ago, right?
Right. It is a long time ago, but in terms of comprehensive plan documents, it's typically they're a 20-year document, and so we're a little bit past expiration of that particular plan. We definitely have some needs there, and it's a big project, and we'll probably do some preliminary work on it later this year and ask for assistance through a consultant actually early in 2020, and that's because we want to pull in some help with it because we need a lot of feedback and views from our community, and that means we're going to do a lot of community engagement on that particular document. But that's our anticipated timeline at this point.
So thank you, Brad. Thank you to the chamber. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, everyone. So again, thanks to Mayor Burns and City Administrator Sharon Hansen for sharing their highlights in 2018 and what to expect in 2019. I hope that you found a lot of value in this. This is a good way for them to be in front of our businesses and in front of our community to talk about everything that's good about Marshall. So have a nice rest of the day. Make sure, like I said, sent in my reminder yesterday or on Monday, I hope you have your umbrella. Otherwise, it could make for a long walk. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.